The reward is defined as the compensation that the Muslim receives in the hereafter for the good deeds that he did in this life among what makes him happy. An example of the reward that is guaranteed to the righteous Muslim in the grave is that his grave is expanded approximately 105 feet by 105 feet, and his grave is illuminated with a light similar to the light of the full moon, and the fragrance of paradise will be present in the grave. The sincere intention means for the Muslim to do the good deed, seeking the acceptance of Allah only, and not the praise of the people. So alhamdulillah, we are grateful to Allah that we have been guided to Islam. And we are grateful to Allah that we have been guided to have access to the knowledge of Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah, because Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah is the saved group. So we are grateful that we are Muslims, because Islam is the only true religion. And we are grateful that we are part of the saved group, which is Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah, which is the only group that is saved, yani the ones who they have the creed of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the creed of the companions, and they are the majority. So we reached up to lesson 48, which is rules of fasting in Ramadan. And we are getting close to Ramadan. We are now in Jumad al-Akhirah. Then after Jumad al-Akhirah is Rajab, then Sha'ban, and then Ramadan. So we're less than 3 months, 3 lunar months away from Ramadan. May Allah Ta'ala enable us to capitalize on that great opportunity to obey Allah and worship and to get good deeds. So we're at lesson 48, page 240. Whoever is following along on a collection of goodness, subhanallah. Some people, subhanallah, they are special. Maybe be proactive. Hook a brother up with some tea. Subhanallah. Page 240, if you're following along. Collection of goodness. It's about rules of fasting Ramadan. This one actually was given by Shaykh Nizar al-Halabi, who was the most prominent student of Shaykh Abdullah, rahimahullah. And in brief, if you don't already know about him, he was assassinated by the Wahhabis in 1995. He was a man of the people. He was loved by all the people, whether they were Sunnis or other than that. Even like some non-Muslims, they respected him and revered him because he was a man of the people. So he truly helped the people. He helped the poor, and with his own money, with anything that he could do for them, he would help them. He was humble. Even though he was the president of an international organization, he would clean the bathrooms on his own. He would serve the Muslims, serve the people, look out for the welfare of the country, making the place better for everyone. So basically, he had reached popularity and popular support to an extent where it was feared by his enemies that he would become the mufti of his country. And obviously that is a political position with much power. They didn't want him to have it. And on top of that, he was warning extensively and successfully against the Wahhabis. And they actually approached him so that he could just be silent about them, not even propagate their creed or anything like that, not even teach their teachings or recruit people for them. No, they just wanted him to stay silent about them, to stop warning the people against them. And he refused. And they offered him a blank check to do that. So what happens when the agents of the devil when the tyrants and the oppressors, when they try to buy you and you refuse, what do next? They kill you, they eliminate you, they remove you. And so that's what happened to him. So he was a great sheikh, a great scholar, and he was a hero for this Muslim nation. So this lesson was given by Sheikh Nizar, the son of Rashid al-Halabi. May Allah have mercy on him. He gave it in Beirut, and it is about clarifying the rules of fasting Ramadan. This lesson was heard by Sheikh Samir, the son of Sami al-Qadi, and Sheikh Nabil, the son of Muhammad al-Sharif, Hafidhahum Allah, two of his greatest students, and also they're still alive, and they're still teaching, and many people have benefited from them throughout the decades. So page 240, if you have the book, Collection of Goodness, volume 1, page 240, second paragraph. Sheikh Nizar, may Allah have mercy upon him, said, all praise is due to Allah, the Lord of the worlds. To him belong the endowments of proper commendations. May Allah raise the rank of our Master Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam and his Muslim relatives, and protect his nation from that which the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam fears for it. Thereafter, Allah Ta'ala revealed in Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 183, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. So this verse means, O believers, fasting is an important obligation. Fasting is an obligation upon you as it was ordained upon the Muslim nations before you to help you become pious. So this is an explicit verse from the Quran that shows that fasting in the month of Ramadan is an obligation. It says, كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمْ, and it was ordained upon you, yani Allah made an obligation upon you, as-siyam, كَمَا كُتِبَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ, just as it was ordained for those that came before you. Yani that means that the Muslims of the previous nations, they also were obligated to do an obligatory fasting. However, it was not during the month of Ramadan. The Prophet ﷺ said, من صام رمضان إيمانا واحتسابا غفر له ما تقدم من ذنبه. It means the believer who fasts Ramadan with a sincere intention, seeking reward from Allah, all of his previous small sins will be forgiven. Narrated by Bukhari. So here in the hadith, so first we have the ayah that tells us that fasting is an obligation. Next thing that we have is the hadith where the Prophet ﷺ is telling us of the great reward that is associated with fasting Ramadan. The author said, fasting is like other acts of worship. It has integrals, conditions, and validators. It is an obligation upon the one who wants to fast to learn them so that his fasting would be valid and accepted by Allah. So this is a fundamental rule, which is that, yes, we're obligated to do certain things. Allah Ta'ala, He made certain things an obligation upon us. So those things, we have to do them. Now, how do we do them? How do we fulfill those obligations that Allah made an obligation upon us? Do we do it any which way? Do we do it however we see fit? Do we do it however we see fit? Do we do it in any way that we just say our intention is enough? No, of course not. Even in the worldly matters and in things that are not going to affect you in the hereafter, things that aren't going to make or break you in the hereafter, there's protocol. There's protocol for those things. In this world, in some worldly matters, in many worldly matters, there's protocol. Can you do it however you want? No. Can you drive on the right side of the let's say, left side of the road? No. Can you run a red light? No. Can you go 100 miles per hour in a 45 mile per hour zone? No. You can't do it how you see fit. You can't do it based on your opinion or your feelings or your preferences. And that's something that's not even, if you run the red light, it's not haram. You know what I mean? If you go 100 miles per hour in a 45 mile per hour zone, it's not haram. You won't get a sin. Now, I'm not telling you to go 100 miles per hour in a 45 mile per hour zone. I'm just saying, can you have it your way with red lights and the speed limit? No, and that's something that's not even forbidden yet. It's not something that God ordered. And God did not order you to only go 45 miles per hour or to only have a certain speed limit. God did not order that you have to stop at a red light. But can you have it your way? Can you do it your way? No. So for fulfilling what God ordered, you also cannot have it your way. You have to do it you have to fulfill the obligation in a way that is accepted by God. So it is an obligation upon the one who wants to fast to learn them, to learn the integrals, to learn the conditions, to learn the invalidators, so that his fasting would be valid and accepted by Allah. He can't just say, I hope that I did it right. He can't just say, my intention is enough. He can't just say, I wanted to do good. He can't say that. Some ignorant people that don't want to take accountability for their shortcomings or for their laziness or for their unwillingness to submit and obey Allah, they say, oh, God knows my intention. They say, God knows my heart. Of course God knows your heart. Of course God knows what you intend. Of course God knows what you have inside. Because nothing is hidden from God. But does that mean that you get to fall short and not do your obligations? No. The author said, fasting in Ramadan was ordained in the 2nd Hijri century, and the Prophet ﷺ fasted 9 years and he died after that. Fasting is an obligation that is known by necessity to be of the religion. That is, it is apparent among the Muslims. The ignorant and the scholar know that. So, it's confirmed, it's known by necessity in Islam. Both the scholar and the common Muslim, they know that it is an obligation to fast Ramadan. So whoever denies it blasphemes. Now, a nice fact about Ramadan is that the Muslims didn't start fasting it until 15 years after the Prophet ﷺ received the revelation. Allahu Akbar. So in the beginning, the Prophet ﷺ and the Muslims, they were living in Mecca. When the Prophet ﷺ first received the revelation, spent 10 years in Mecca. Then, 13 years in Mecca. Then after those 13 years, Allah Ta'ala ordered him and the Muslims to move to Al-Madinah. And so, 2 years after, or the year after they moved to Al-Madinah, it was ordained upon them to fast the month of Ramadan. Hence, the one who denies the obligation of fasting in the month of Ramadan is a non-Muslim. As for the one who breaks his fast during the day of Ramadan with no religious excuse, while believing that it is an obligation, then such a person does not commit kufr, and he wouldn't be blasphemed, he would not exit from Islam because of that, but he would be an enormous sinner who deserves the torture, the severe torture of hellfire. Wal-'iyadhu billah. Fasting is confirmed in the Quran and the pure Sunnah. Allah revealed in Surah Al-Baqarah, فَمَنْ شَهِدَ مِنْكُمُ الشَّهْرَ فَلْيَصُمْهُ. The Prophet ﷺ said, بُنِيَ الْإِسْلَامُ عَلَى خَمْسٍ. So these things are confirmed. The obligation of fasting Ramadan is confirmed. So what does that tell us? That tells us that if there's a Muslim who he knows fasting Ramadan is an obligation, but because he's too attached to food, he doesn't fast. You know, he eats cake and he eats pizza during the day of Ramadan, al-iyadhu billah. I don't see how he could enjoy it. But anyways, because of that, the person, he doesn't fast. So what's his case? His case is that he's an enormous sinner and he's deserving of the severe torture. However, we don't say that because he ate during Ramadan that he becomes a kafir. We don't say that the Muslim becomes a kafir just by committing a sin. If the Muslim commits a sin without legitimizing it, he's an enormous sinner. He's a fasiq, not a kafir. But if the person that commits a sin, they say that it's halal, they legitimize it, even if they're joking, right? Some people nowadays don't understand the rules of apostasy, and they blaspheme, and they're not aware that they blaspheme because they took the matter lightly, and because they never learned, and because the people that are supposed to be the leaders in religion and the teachers in religion, they avoid this subject because of political reasons, because of excuses that they make, and that are from the shaitan, of course, and from the nafs. While these people are living their lives committing kufr every single day, thinking that they're Muslim when they're not. So do we want to save people from kufr, or do we want to string them along, making them think that they're Muslim when they're not? If we tell someone the truth and they go away from us, that's on them, that's not on us. If we tell someone the truth and they reject it, then we ask Allah to guide them, we make dua, we try again until they die. But we don't compromise or pretend or stay silent on certain issues just because we want people to stay around us or we want people to listen to us. If someone asks for the truth, you give it to them. Subhanallah. So basically, a person that commits a sin, a Muslim that commits a sin without legitimizing it, he is still a Muslim, but he's a fasiq. If the person knows that this thing is haram, and despite that they say it's halal, then they exit from Islam, even if they don't do that sin themselves. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Bunya al-Islamu ala khamsin." It means the most important matters of Islam are 5. And he listed among them the fasting of Ramadan, narrated by the 2 shaykhs, yani al-Bukhari and Muslim. This is why the Muslim nation has unanimously agreed that it is an obligation to fast Ramadan. It is an obligation upon every Muslim who is pubescent, sane, and able to fast, other than the woman in her menses or postpartum bleeding, the sick, and the very old man and very old woman who are unable. Hence, fasting is not valid from an original non-Muslim, nor from an apostate. And this is the person who was Muslim, but then he exited from Islam. It is not valid from the menstruating or postpartum bleeding woman. If they fast while the blood is still flowing, they would be sinful, and they have to make it up. They would be sinful, and it's not valid. However, then it says, fasting is not an obligation on the boy, that is, the one who is not pubescent. However, when he has completed 10 lunar years of age, it is an obligation upon the guardian to hit him for leaving out fasting if he can bear fasting. So this hitting that has been sanctioned in the Islamic law and the revealed law, it's not a harmful hitting. And it's not abuse, and it's not the way that the people in the West think about it, subhanAllah. The people in the West, their mentalities, they have been corrupted. Their mindsets have been corrupted, have been perverted. So that's why, like the things that are mentioned in Islam about marriage and sexuality, the non-Muslims, they take it in a perverted way. And the things that are mentioned about disciplining the wife and disciplining the child, they take it in a corrupt way. So basically, in Islam, if the child is 10 lunar years of age, which would be and a little bit more than 10 solar years, a little bit less than 10 solar years. This child, if he is ordered to fast and he's ordered to fast by his Muslim parent, and he refuses, and if the Muslim parent, let's say, disciplines him and he hits him, he will obey, then in this case the Muslim parent is obligated to hit the Muslim child to make him fast. But the hitting cannot be harmful, meaning he cannot break his bone, he cannot hit him in any fatal spots, he cannot hit him on the face, he cannot hit him in the base of the skull, he cannot hit him in any place that would cause a disability. He can't poke out his eyes, he can't, and there's certain places he can't hit him. And he cannot hit him in a way that he breaks his bones or sends him to the hospital. So what can he do? He can hit him with, let's say, a rolled up t-shirt. A cotton t-shirt. That's not going to kill anyone. I mean, you have to really hit somebody really, really hard to kill them with a rolled up t-shirt. And that's not going to, and you spank the child on the buttocks, on the legs. That's not abuse. That's discipline. The Muslim child needs to know that Allah Ta'ala is the number one priority to be obeyed. Everyone else can be disobeyed. And when it's the difference between obeying Allah and a creation, any creation can be disobeyed. We only obey Allah. And so we don't obey a creation in sin, and we don't obey a creation in disobedience to Allah. Alhamdulillah. The author said, "It is not an obligation upon the sick person who finds great difficulty in fasting to fast, nor upon the traveler traveling a long travel. So the one who he has a great difficulty in fasting, he doesn't have to fast. Great difficulty like what? Not that he gets really hungry, really thirsty. For example, if he fasts, he'll faint. That's just his body, his physical strength. He'll faint. So he doesn't have to fast. He does something else. And the traveler that's traveling a long travel, whether it's a hard travel or an easy travel, but it's long, he can break his fast too, but he doesn't have to." Yes. How many miles is that? Yes. That's very good. So an example of long travel is like traveling, let's say, 85 miles with a separation between the two towns. That's considered to be a long travel. And if it was satisfying the conditions, then the one who, let's say, initiated that travel before the dawn of that day, he's allowed to break his fast for that day. He doesn't have to though, but he is allowed. They both have to make it up. And the one who he had severe difficulty in fasting, he has to make it up. And if that difficulty, obviously, it doesn't remain. Then he says, if the sick person fasts and the traveler fasts, it is valid for them. But if the fasting harms them, it is sinful for them. So in the case of the one who he is allowed to not fast because of a severe difficulty, like a sickness, but they still choose to fast anyway. If they are harmed severely by fasting, their fasting would be valid, but they are sinful for harming themselves. It is an obligation to fast upon the Ajuz al-Fani if they fear. It is not an obligation to fast upon the Ajuz al-Fani if they fear great bodily harm or health. And that means the elderly. the elderly person. So like he's 90 years old, he is allowed to break his fast, and he's not obligated to fast if they fear great bodily harm or death. So they do something else instead. Among the obligations of fasting are 5 things. The first is the intention, and its place is the heart. Hence, it is not a condition to utter it with the tongue. It is an obligation for every day of Ramadan during the night before that day. It is not valid to fast without an intention, so the person says in their heart, for example, I fast tomorrow to fulfill the obligation of Ramadan this year, seeking reward from Allah. Likewise, it is an obligation upon the menstruating woman and the postpartum bleeding woman when their blood stops on the night before the fasting day to intend to fast the next day of Ramadan, even if she has not yet made the obligatory whole body wash. So here we don't want to get any confusion. While the woman is bleeding, she cannot intend to fast. While the woman has blood flowing, either from menstruation or postpartum bleeding, she cannot intend to fast. Once the blood stops, let's say the blood stopped flowing, but before she makes the purificatory ghusl, she still hasn't made the ghusl yet, but her period stopped, her postpartum bleeding stopped, she's not bleeding anymore. Now she can make the intention. So let's say, let's say that she saw that the blood stopped. She decided to take a nap after the Isha time was in, right? So she decided to take a nap after the Isha time, and she had set an alarm to wake up before Fajr so that she can make ghusl and pray. But she overstepped her alarm. But before she took the nap, she intended, of course, to fast the next day of Ramadan. So she overstepped the alarm, she woke up after Isha. She still hasn't made ghusl, but because she had the intention after her blood stopped, the fasting is valid. And because she was highly confident, she was sure that she would wake up before Isha was over, and she intended to wake up before Isha was over, and that she just happened to oversleep, she's not sinful. But it is disliked to fall asleep before you have prayed a prayer, and when you're in that prayer time, even if you believe that you're going to wake up before the time is over. It's disliked. The author said the second is to abstain, starting from the beginning of the dawn until the sun sets, from eating, drinking, and inserting anything that has a volume, even if that thing was small, into the head or stomach, or intestines, or their legs from an open inlet, like the mouth, the nose, the vaginal opening, and the anus. Because surely the person invalidates their fast by that. As to the one who eats or drinks while forgetting they are fasting, even if his eating and drinking are plentiful, he does not invalidate his fast, because the Prophet ﷺ said, إِذَا نَسِيَ أَحَدُكُمْ وَهُوَ الصَّائِمُ فَأَكَلَ وَشَرِبْ فَلْيُتِمَّ صَوْمَهُ فَإِنَّمَا أَطْعَمَهُ اللَّهُ وَسَقَاهُ. It means if any one of you forgets that they are fasting and he eats and drinks, then let him continue his fasting, because Allah provided him with food and drink. Narrated by Bukhari. When did he remember? He remembered when it was time to break the fast. So when he remembered, he didn't have anything in his mouth or anything. He already had finished eating and everything, right? Oh, so he was in the middle of eating. Okay, so let's say that he was in the middle of eating. And then he swallowed, let's say, that bite of food. He swallowed it. Then when he went to take the next bite, he remembered that, oh, it's Ramadan, I'm supposed to be fasting. Then the next moment, he saw that Maghrib was in. His fast is valid and he can continue eating. Because he really forgot. If he didn't really forget, then obviously Allah Ta'ala knows, and that person themselves know, and he would have an invalid fast and he would have an enormous sin. But if the case is really that he did forget, and he did, that scenario happen, the moment that he swallowed the last bite of food, and he was about to take another bite, he remembered that he's supposed to be fasting. Then the next moment he saw, for example, that the sun set, so it became Maghrib as soon as he realized that he had been eating while forgetting. His fast is valid, and he can continue eating because now it's Maghrib. So. It is an obligation upon the person fasting to abstain from sexual intercourse and from making the sexual ejaculatory fluid exit through masturbation or rubbing, because indeed this breaks the fast. As for if the person ejaculated their sexual fluid because of looking at something or because of their thoughts, this does not invalidate their fasting. So we said that the integrals of fasting are two. Number one is the intention, we explained that. The second is to abstain from the invalidators. So among those invalidators is sexual intercourse. So even if the ejaculation does not occur, but just doing what is defined as sexual intercourse breaks the fast. And what is the definition of sexual intercourse Islamically? It is the insertion of the head of the penis into a vagina. So that's sexual intercourse. So if less than that is inserted, it's not called sexual intercourse. And he would not have his fast broken. And it would not be like to the extent of fornication if it was unlawful. If it was without a marriage contract, for example. And for the other one it says, and from making the sexual ejaculatory fluid exit, from making the mani exit. That's the sexual ejaculatory fluid. So, since we're not talking about sexual intercourse, we're talking about the exiting of the mani. How does that usually happen? And through some sort of contact. But here the scholars, they mention masturbation in general, but it's not exclusive or specific to masturbation. It's just however the person makes their mani exit out of them through contact. That would be what makes the fasting invalid. So if it was rubbing with the hand, or rubbing another part of the body, or rubbing an inanimate object, whatever the case may be, whatever the person used as contact to stimulate the area to make the mani exit, that's what, and it exited, that's what breaks the fast. As for if the person, they ejaculated, but not through contact. So let's say that they were just daydreaming, and their situation is that daydream made them ejaculate, and without touching, without contact, without anything, then in that case, the fast is not broken. Likewise, it is an obligation upon the Muslim to remain steadfast on Islam during Ramadan and other than in Ramadan by avoiding falling into all three kinds of kufr. The apostate believes, like the one who believes that Allah is a body or a light or a spirit, or denies the obligation of the prayer or fasting, or legitimizes drinking wine, and the kufr action, the apostate action, like throwing the Quran in the trash and knowingly, and the kufr sayings like cussing Allah, or a prophet among the prophets, or an angel among the angels, or belittling the prayer, or fasting, or the rules of the religion. And whoever makes fun of any of these things, they exit from Islam, as long as they know that these things are Islamically honored. And as long as they know that these things are part of Islam. Hence, the one who falls into any of these kinds, his fasting is invalidated, and he is obligated to return to Islam immediately by uttering the 2 shahadas. And it is an obligation upon him to abstain for the rest of the day, and then to make up this day after Ramadan. So the one who invalidates his fast in a haram way during Ramadan, that doesn't give him now a free pass to now consume and drink and eat and do whatever he wants among the invalidators. No. The one who sinfully breaks his fast during Ramadan and without a religious excuse, that person, he still has to act like he's fasting until the sun sets. And then after the Eid, immediately after, he has to make it up. Among the recommended matters for the one fasting is to rush to break his fast when he is sure that the sun has set. This is because the Prophet ﷺ said, لا يزال الناس بخير ما عجلوا الفطر. When the person breaks his fast, it is recommended for him to say, Allahumma laka sumtu wa ala rizqika aftartu. So for the first hadith, basically it means that the Prophet ﷺ is informing us that the Muslims will be good as long as they rush to break their fast. And as long as they are sure that the time is in, they don't delay it beyond that. Once they're sure that the time is in, they go ahead and break their fast and they don't delay it. So it's a good thing. That means that the Prophet ﷺ is encouraging us to do that. Then the second dua is said after the person breaks their fast. Allahumma laka sumtu ala rizqika aftartu. Which means, oh Allah, I fasted for your sake, seeking reward from you, and upon your sustenance I have broken my fast. So here, anyone who has the hard copy, there's a typo. It says form instead of from, and the R is out of place. Should be behind the O, not after. I'm using a pen. I'll fix it later. It is also recommended for him to delay the sahur meal to the last part of the night and before the dawn, even if it were by a drink of water. So, is another recommended matter of these recommended things that we do related to fasting is for the suhoor to be delayed to the last part of the night and before the dawn, even if it was just a sip of water. So basically you set your alarm, let's say half an hour before the fajr is in, you wake up, you have water next to you, you drink, you make dua, you can go back to sleep. Or you can just get up and start your day from there, which is very beneficial and blessed, especially during Ramadan. It is emphasized for the one fasting to protect his tongue from backbiting, tail-bearing, and saying obscene words, and other than that, among the forbidden matters. If a Muslim insults him or fights him, let him say, just as the Prophet ﷺ taught us in what has been narrated by Al-Bukhari, that he said, الصيام جنة فإذا كان يوم الصوم أحدكم فلا يرفث ولا يجهل وإن امرؤ قاتله أو شاتمه فليقل إني صائم إني صائم. It means if someone was fasting and someone fights against him or insults him, then let him say, I am fasting, I am fasting. Some of the enormous sins void the reward of fasting the day in which they occurred. Hence, the one who does not avoid tale-bearing, backbiting, insulting unrightfully, and giving false testimony, shahadatul zur, while fasting, then such a person has voided the reward of fasting of that day. So, if you are fasting and you gossip, khalas, you just lost your reward. If you're fasting and you insult a Muslim unjustly, you lost your reward. But the fasting is still valid. Let it be known that being patient upon the obedience of Allah is easier than the patience upon His torture. Hence, the Muslim should not be lackadaisical in fulfilling this obligation. Rather, let the month of Ramadan be a station to gain provisions by doing good deeds, because indeed, the best provision is piety, and Allah Ta'ala knows best. That concludes the lesson of the rules of fasting Ramadan. We're going to just start a little bit of the next one so you can get some anticipation for it. Lesson 49, rules of marriage. Marriage. This lesson was given by the Hafiz, the scholar of Islamic law, Shaykh Abdullah, the son of Muhammad al-Abdari. May Allah Ta'ala have mercy upon him. In the year 1398 or 1399, after the Hijrah, in Burj Abi Haydar Mosque in Beirut, it explains some rules pertaining to marriage. This lesson was heard by Sheikh Samir, the son of Sami al-Qadi, Sheikh Nabil, the son of Muhammad al-Sharif, Rahimahumullah, Hafidahumullah. Sheikh Abdullah, may Allah have vast mercy upon him, said, all praise is due to Allah, the Lord of the worlds. To Him belong the endowments and proper commendations. May Allah raise the rank of our Master Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam and his Muslim relatives and protect his nation from that which the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam fears for it. Thereafter, Allah Ta'ala revealed in Surah Al-Baqarah, وَاتَّقُوا يَوْمًا تُرْجَعُونَ فِيهِ إِلَى اللَّهِ ثُمَّ تُوَفَّى كُلُّ نَفْسٍ مَا كَسَبَتْ وَهُمْ لَا يُظْلَمُونَ. This means, and fear a day in which you return to the judgment of Allah, and in which you'll be resurrected and judged in the judgment day. ثُمَّ تُوَفَّى كُلُّ نَفْسٍ مَا كَسَبَتْ, which means that each self will will be given what it has done, what it has acquired. وَهُمْ لَا يُظْلَمُونَ, and none of them will be done injustice to. This verse is the last verse that was revealed from the Quran. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the book of God was revealed in a span of 23 years. The revelation came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam when he was 40 years old, and he remained in Mecca for 13 years, and the Quran used to descend on him part after part, and then he migrated to Al-Madinah by the order of Allah. He lived in Al-Madinah for 10 years, and the Quran was descending on him. The revelation did not descend in the order that it is recited in. Rather, the Prophet ﷺ taught them the order of the recitation after that. Furthermore, piety is an expression referring to fulfilling all the obligations and refraining from all the sins. The obligations are the matters which, if the person leaves out, he deserves the torture in the hereafter. Moreover, the obligations have degrees, and the highest and best obligation is the belief in Allah and His Messenger, then the 5 prayers. An accountable Muslim who needs to learn the matters pertaining to marriage, to know how marriage would be valid and how does divorce happen. This is among the obligations, and whoever does not learn it is destroyed, because he might fall into a matter which Allah prohibited without him knowing that he committed a sin. Hence, it is among the obligations for the accountable Muslim who wants to get married to learn how the marriage is valid and how it is breached after it is done. The Prophet ﷺ said in his advice of taking care of women, إِسْتَحْلَلْتُمْ فُرُوجَهُنَّ بِكَلِمَةِ اللَّهِ. The term kalimatullah here means the statement of the marriage contract. That is, it is a condition for the marriage contract to be valid, for the marriage statement to be said. It is said by the father of the girl to the groom or to the authorized representative of the groom. For example, he says to the groom, "I now give you my daughter so-and-so in marriage." And the groom says, "I now accept her marriage." This is what kalimatullah refers to. And it is done in the presence of two male Muslim witnesses according to a Shafi'i. The contract is not valid except with a guardian and two trustworthy witnesses according to a Shafi'i. We'll stop here inshallah, page 245. We'll continue next week with more details and reading that class and mentioning some more details about marriage. If there are no questions, we'll conclude.